If you want to learn After Effects in as little time as possible, you're in luck, you've come to the right place. Let's dive into it. After Effects can be a super intimidating program, and there is a little bit of a steep learning curve, but my hope is that after this video, you will know everything you need to know to just start playing around in this program and finding what works best for you, and really getting the foundations to take any future tutorials or any future lessons and apply what you're learning here to those future ones as well. So let's start out with explaining these different panels that you see in front of you. And when I say panel, I'm just talking this little area that's highlighted in blue here, or if I click over here, or these panels over here, or this panel down here. So we're gonna start up here with the project panel. So this is what is going to contain all of your compositions, which if you wanna think of a composition like a little timeline or a sequence, composition is what you're working on almost constantly in After Effects. This panel will contain all of your assets that are used in those compositions, as well as the compositions themselves. And you're gonna see that in action here in just a moment. And inside of this panel, if you come down here, you can create a bin or just a little folder to organize all of it. So that's gonna be really helpful as we go along. For now, I'm just gonna hit Command Z and undo that bin. The next panel that we're gonna look at down here is your timeline panel, which right now it just says none, but this is where your timeline is gonna be while you're working on it. So when you open up a composition, this is where that's gonna open up. And After Effects works in layers. Think of those old overhead projectors from school that you could layer clear sheets onto one another. That's basically how it works in After Effects too. Again, we're gonna see these layers very shortly, but just know that all of your composition data, your layers, all of that is gonna be right in here. It's a very important panel. You're not gonna wanna miss that one. Maybe the most important panel, and the reason that I have it set to the dead center and it's set to the dead center by default, is the composition panel. The word of the day is compositions. This panel is going to show you visually what's on the screen. When you hit play, this is what your final output is going to look like in this panel. You can and will be making a lot of adjustments in this panel. And then over here to the right, we have a bunch of mini panels. This is where we're going to find things like effects to apply to our videos or presets for animations. This is where you're going to find, if I scroll down here, a tracking tool to track our camera or track the motion of an object within our scene. And something that I think is really cool is that you can add and subtract from any of these panels. So for example, if I don't want to see the tracker, I can come up here to Window and unclick Tracker, and just like that, it's gone. But I want to see the tracker, so I'm going to put it back. And I want this to be interactive, so feel free to follow along with me as I walk you through a simple yet effective first animation for you to work on. For this tutorial, if you're following along, I'm going to have you use any clip from any video that you want, and I'm going to have you use any image that you want to go with that. So for now, I'm just going to click in here. I'm going to pull in this piece of footage and this PNG. And what we can do is actually just drag that right into our project panel. And you're going to see it loads those in perfectly. And just to show you how easy it is to create a bin, we can come down here, create a bin. Let's call this assets. And then I'm going to click down here and just drag to highlight both of these, drag them into our assets folder. And now if I close that folder up, boom, nice and organized. So the first thing that we want to do is create a composition. I've said it 100 times already, I feel like, but we need to learn and get comfortable with creating compositions. That's what we're going to be working in all the time. A really quick and easy way to create a composition is to select what you want to start with. In this case, it'll be this little time-lapse video. Drag that over to where it says New Composition and let go. And just like that, we got our composition. Now you'll notice that down here in our timeline, we now see the name of our video clip and then this big blue bar stretched out. That blue bar is just our footage. If we scrub through that, you're gonna see that it starts to play, it starts to move. And this really small green and blue bar up here is just showing you what After Effects already has rendered for you to preview. This is called the RAM preview, and this can be a little tricky, this can be a little finicky. I may actually be low on space on my computer, so I'm not even sure if mine's gonna play all the way through. Yeah, you'll see right there, it kind of cuts off. Don't worry about RAM preview too much for right now, we're gonna talk about that more later. So now that we have this base layer of footage brought in, we're going to bring in this little cute turtle playing skateboard. I don't know why it's titled that. I got this from Envato Elements. They are a great website if you're looking for cute turtles on skateboards. So we're going to drag this into our composition, and we can do this one of two ways. We can either drag it directly on the comp here and release, or let's just undo that. We can drag it into our timeline into a certain position. So you see that blue bar, that's either going to put it above or below our footage. So for now, let's put it above our footage. And right now this turtle's huge. We obviously don't want that. So what we can do is hit S on our keyboard, and that's gonna bring up the scale for our turtle. come over here to where it says 100%, and we can just start dragging that down. And this is going to be different depending on what you bring into your composition. But for now, we're going to make this turtle nice and small, keep him right here in the center. So before we go any further, right now we're a little bit zoomed in on our video. You'll see over here that it's listed at 100% magnification. What we can actually do is drop this down and hit fit. And that will just size it so that our entire frame fits in our frame. So now that we have this image in our composition, let's give it some motion. He's a skateboarding turtle. We got to make him move. So the way that we do this is we're going to come all the way back to the beginning of our timeline. So you can just drag this blue arrowhead all the way to the beginning. Let's click on our layer that has our turtle, and we're going to hit P on our keyboard to bring up our position. Next to the word position, we see this little stopwatch. If we click that, you see this little diamond appear here. That is a keyframe. So the way keyframes work is you're telling After Effects, hey, on this frame, I want the turtle to be here. And then later on, in this frame, let's say at 1 second, I want the turtle to be somewhere else. And if you click your turtle and you move it, you're going to notice that it automatically adds a keyframe and this little motion guide here in the composition window. Now this turtle looks like he's actually skating to the left, so I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that keyframe, and I'm going to go back to our first keyframe. We're going to drag our turtle all the way to the right, and if you hit Shift, it'll move him in a straight line. Then we're going to come to 1 second, and again, this is where if we move him, it will automatically create a keyframe. So we're going to start dragging him and then click Shift. It's important to start dragging first, otherwise it won't constrain properly. And we're just going to drag him to the center. Now if we play it back, our little turtle skateboarding. I'm so proud of him. He learned so quick. So every time you see a diamond on this timeline, that's a keyframe. And keyframes aren't just for position. You can do keyframes for scale and rotation and opacity. Keyframes are your best friend. We're going to be working with them all the time. Don't be intimidated. You'll learn to love them as you go on. The other thing I'm noticing right now is that our timeline is way too long. It's almost 15 seconds. So if we take this lower bar here, this is our in and out, and I just drag this back to, we'll say 5 seconds, right around 5 seconds. I can then right click inside of this work area and hit Trim Comp to Work Area. And boom, now our whole work area is 5 seconds. So if I hit play, you can see that he moves, but it doesn't look very good. It's just kind of this static, stagnant animation. So the way that we can fix that is if we highlight both keyframes, and we can do one of two things. We can either right click, come down to Keyframe Assistant, and hit Easy Ease, or as it says here, we can just hit F9. So either one of those, they both do the exact same thing. So when I hit that, you see that these turn into this little hourglass shape. And what that does is it kind of smooths out our motion. It starts a little more slow. Toward the middle, it gets a little faster, then it slows down toward the end. And I don't want you to worry about this yet, but I'm just going to show you visually what that looks like. You don't need to use the graph editor. This is just so I can show you what that's doing. If I click the graph editor, and down here you're going to see that we are working in the speed graph, so how fast this is moving. You're going to see that it starts off really slow, less than 500 pixels per second. It goes all the way up to over 1500 pixels per second, and then slowly starts to slow down again. But this means that we can do some pretty cool stuff. If you want to play around in here, go for it. You're not going to break After Effects. Maybe what I'll do here is just drag this handle to make him start a little bit faster. So he's starting really fast, gets fast, and then slowly slows down. And then I'm going to make this curve go the other way so he slows down even more. So he's going to get really, really fast and then really slowly come to a stop. Again, no pressure to use that, but if you want to play around in the graph editor, I highly recommend it. So let's play back our animation. Whoa, that's fast. What we can do if we want to slow that down is super easy. We can just take this second keyframe and drag it out a little bit. And if we go back into our graph editor, you're going to see that all that did was extend out the area that we're working with. So we'll come back here to the beginning. That looks a lot nicer. This is just kind of a smooth intro, and that looks like a much smoother animation to me. It just has a little bit more life to it. I still think we could do a little bit more with this, so I'm going to show you how to make another effect using keyframes that you guys can walk along with me. I'm going to make this have an opacity fade, which means I'm going to start it off invisible, and then it's going to become visible as time goes on using keyframes. So to pull up opacity, we're going to have our turtle selected here. We're going to make sure we're in our timeline window, and we're going to hit the letter T on our keyboard. I don't know why T means opacity, but it does. So for this one, I think we should work backwards because we want to end at 100% opacity. And it doesn't really matter which way you do this. I'm just using this for example. So we're going to come a few frames in here, maybe when the turtle's about here. And we're going to click this stopwatch to create a keyframe. And then we're going to come back all the way here to the beginning. And we can do one of two things. We can either have it automatically create a keyframe by taking this and dragging it all the way down to 0%. Or if I undo that, we can click this little diamond over here to add or remove a keyframe. So if you're on a keyframe and you click this, you'll remove it. If you're not on a keyframe and you click this, you'll add one. Now that that's added, we can drag our opacity down to 0%. So now our look is going to be the turtle slowly fading onto screen as he's moving. Let's see what that looks like. That looks cool. It looks like it just kind of comes out of nowhere. And if we want to take it one step further, underneath this little icon of a ball moving, this is our motion blur. So if we click this box, it'll turn motion blur on, and you'll see we get this kind of cool motion blur line going on with the turtle. So let's see what that looks like. That looks pretty good. I like that. It definitely adds some more life to the animation. Now, remember when we were talking about that speed graph editor? If I select these two keyframes and I go into that editor, you're going to notice that it's just a straight line. That's because, again, we didn't add any easing to these keyframes. So it's just a straight changing of the opacity, which is totally fine for right now. You don't always need to use easy easing, and you don't always need to use the graph editor. We're going to be talking about the graph editor in some later videos, much more in depth. But for now, feel free to play around with it. I really do encourage you to just play in this program for a bit. So we have our skateboarding turtle. Now we need to add some text on screen. To add text, hit Command-T or Control-T if you're on a Windows machine. And we're going to come up here and just click inside of our composition and type Skatin' Turtle. And if we hit Command-A, we can select all of that text. And then over here on the right side is where we're going to see our character setup. I'm going to drag this font size up, make it a little bit bigger. Maybe we can make it a cool purple like the skateboard. So I just click the eyedropper tool, select the skateboard. That looks really 90s. Maybe we'll go back to kind of like this darker, blue that it had. That's a little bit better. And in here, we can change up our font to really anything we want. Let's try Gotham. I really like Gotham. And here's something fun too. You notice that Skatin' Turtle is really not aligned in the center at all right now. So over here on the right, we'll go to our align window. And if you don't see this, we can just go into window and then make sure that align is checked. And then we're going to hit align horizontally. And that's going to toss that right in the middle of our frame. But now we might notice that our turtle doesn't really land in the center when we add our text. So to fix that, we can click on our turtle layer and we can hit the letter U. And U is going to show us all of our keyframes. So let's come to our last keyframe here. And when we're on our keyframe, you're going to notice that the keyframe diamond lights up blue. That lets you know that you're right on that keyframe. And we can come up here and again, we can just hit align horizontally. So now he's going to land right in the center. Coming back to this text layer, and I'll zoom in here a little bit. You see this little tiny dot in the corner. That's our anchor point. So that means if we scale our text, it's going to scale around that point. And we don't want it to be in the corner like that. So a really easy way to fix that is to make sure that your text layer or whatever layer you want to fix is selected. Come up here to this little icon. It's called the Pan Behind tool. You're going to hit Command and then you're going to double click. And right there, it moves our anchor point to the very center of our text layer. So I'll zoom back out here. I'll kind of reframe us. And by the way, all I'm doing to reframe is holding the space bar and then clicking to move. So let's see. Our guy skates in and he stops. And maybe we want him to stop a little bit sooner, so I'll drag his keyframe in. Let's see what that looks like. Skates in, stops. And then right here, we're going to want our text to maybe scale up and kind of bounce into the frame. We can do this by clicking our text layer in our timeline and dragging the red bar over to where we want it to start. So this means that it's not going to be on screen until right there. So let's give it some animation. We're going to hit S to bring up that scale. Let's go a few frames in. We know that we want it to end up being this size. So I'll add a keyframe here, and then we'll go back to the beginning, and let's have it come in from nothing. I'm going to click here where it says 100%, and I'm just going to hit 0. So now it kind of just pops in. Again, it's lacking a little bit of life, so let's add a little bit more room between these keyframes, select both of them, and then on our keyboard, we're going to hit F9 to make them easy ease. That looks a lot better. So here we go. Turtle skates in, Skatin' Turtle. It's basic, but you just animated something. You just animated text and a turtle. And let's take it one step further. Let's do a little bit to this background layer. So I'm going to click our background layer here, and I'm going to go up to Effects and Presets. And for right now, let's just mess with the hue and saturation. So you can come up to the search bar and type in hue, and you're going to find hue and saturation, and you can just drag that into your timeline onto the layer that you want it to affect. So I'll drop it there, and let's just play around here a little bit. Let's change the hue to, I kind of like that, like a little pink background. And we can come down here and maybe bring the saturation down just a little bit as well. Bring the brightness down to kind of make the turtle pop. We are starting to lose the word skating a little bit. So we can come in here, we can hit character, and let's just make it white for right now. Yeah, I like that. I think it looks nice. So we'll come in here, and you guys just play around with this. See what looks best to you. Play with the lightness, play with the hue, play with the saturation. So let's see what we got now. Skating turtle. I like it. And there are a lot more things that you can do with these techniques. This is just the very most basic things that you can learn. But you did it. You animated something in After Effects. Now the only thing left to do is to export it. Get it ready for all your friends and family to see that you animated a skating turtle on a mountain time-lapse background, because that's what everybody wants. So we're going to come up here and we're going to hit File, Export, Add to Render Queue. That's going to pop open our render queue here. So this lives in the same area as our timeline. It's just another tab. Underneath Output Module, we can click where it says High Quality, and we can actually change this to really anything we want. For right now, I'm going to choose H.264. Then I can come into Format Options. And when I'm in here, I'm just going to bring this up a little bit to maybe 10 megabits per second. You're probably going to have to play around with this. It's going to be a little bit different for everything that you work on. I'll hit OK. I'll hit OK. And now I just need to tell it where I want it to save. So I'll hit Output To, and I'm going to save it in our AE tutorial folder. And by default, it's going to save as whatever your timeline is called. We can change this again by clicking it, and we can call it Turtle Test. I'll hit Save. I'll hit Render. You'll see it render through there. And now when I open up Finder, I'm going to see Turtle Test. And if I click that, I can preview it. And there we go. We got a little animated skating turtle. I don't know what you would use this for, but if you want an animated skating turtle, you got it. Just remember, the point of this video is to show you that it's so easy to dive into After Effects, start learning this stuff. There's no reason to hold back. There's no reason to wait. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to be making more and more videos on how to actually dive into After Effects, how to do really specific things, how to improve the quality of your animations. But be proud of yourself. You animated today. Find some files, play around with them in After Effects. You cannot break this program, I promise you. Push it to its limits, experiment, fail, make the mistakes, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching, and if you like this video, please consider subscribing. I'll see you guys next week.